We know that the Finnish studies talk about the benefits of sauna. A lot of people are using now infrared saunas. How effective do you think those are?
Most of the studies are done in Finland on the traditional sauna. They do find that 4 times a week of sauna use is linked to 40% reduced all-cause mortality and 63% reduced risk of hypertension and heart disease mortality and 65% reduced Alzheimer's.
Siim Land is an 8-fold best-selling author, anthropologist, keynote speaker and longevity enthusiast with over a decade of research in health and longevity.
So elevation of your body temperature then increases the expression of these HEAT proteins, reduces blood sugar levels, increases autophagy. So there's many mechanisms there, but you can mimic that with the infrared sauna or the infrared blanket or the traditional sauna.
Siim, it is so great to have you here today. I've been looking forward to this. Your awesome new book, The Longevity Leap, which I have to say, I think contains pretty much everything anyone needs to know about longevity. It's a really, really detailed explanation, but super easy for people to read and understand as well. So firstly, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here and I'm glad you liked it.
So I guess a good place to kick off for people listening would be to start off with what exactly is causing aging?
Yeah, I mean, that's what humans have been trying to figure out for thousands of years. And, scientists right now even don't know exactly what's the, cause or what are some of the mechanisms in play. We do have like a vague idea of some of the characteristics of aging or like the things that go wrong. They're called like the hallmarks of aging, and they're like most related to like cellular function and some like telomeres and mitochondria and those kind of things that people have heard of before. But what causes aging, I think you could look at aging as just that's built into the DNA of our body, or like it's just programmed into our DNA to age. Like every organism dies in nature as well. There's no like immortal animals technically, with a few exceptions of like some jelly beans or like jellyfish and some hydras, etc. They can regenerate, but like there's no immortality that's very easily available. And what causes aging, just becoming older is like the biggest cause of aging. So like aging, you can call aging like as a progressive decline in health over time, and some of the characteristics that accompany that. So like gray hair, loss of muscle, loss of strength, wrinkles, loss of bone density, they're just all kind of some of the outcomes of aging, the kind of visible signs of aging. But on a cellular level, there's like many things that are like characteristic of this process. So like mitochondrial dysfunction, cell senescence, which are these kind of zombie cells called, telomere shortening, impaired nutrient signaling, loss of autophagy, chronic inflammation, and many other of these hallmarks.
And is there like a cutoff point? So for people listening who may be younger generation like yourself, is there a point where we're considered to be in our prime and we can kind of get away with things and not worry so much about it? And then where does that aging rate kicking? Obviously we're aging right from birth, but is there a point at which we are at peak physical and mental performance, if you like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can look at it in many ways, and there are like different peaks in your life. So from a chronic disease risk perspective, then if you're like a teenager, then that's where you have the lowest risk of all these chronic diseases like heart disease and cancer and Alzheimer's and diabetes and those kind of things. So from a health perspective, that's where your body is the healthiest. And from like a metabolic health perspective as well, I would imagine that's where you have the highest metabolic rate, and that's where you can get away with eating the most of like carbs and processed foods and just junk food and different fats, etc. Now from a physical fitness standpoint, then it's a bit different. Like your muscle strength and cardiorespiratory fitness and bone density don't peak in your teenage years. Those things usually peak in your like early 30s for men at least, and for women muscle strength appears to peak slightly later as well, so in the early 40s. So there is like a big kind of difference. So like you're not as strong as a 18-year-old and or as fit as an 18-year-old versus if you're a 30-year-old, with the exception of like VO2 max. VO2 max is which peaks at like 18 years of age, but muscle strength and muscle mass are like much later. And moving further, then you are like fittest in your 20s and early 30s. You have also like pretty good metabolic health at that point. But after the 30s is where the average person tends to start to see a decline in their health, at least to a certain extent. They might gain a few extra pounds. They might have some more aches and pains, or they're not able to run as fast or be as strong as they were in their 20s. But it's hard to say if it's because of some actual decline in these functions, or is it because of just sedentary lifestyle and not exercising as much as you used to.
Mm-hmm.
So this age-related muscle loss, sarcopenia, it is true that there is like natural processes that reduce muscle mass and muscle strength with age, but a lot of it is also just because of being sedentary and not actually lifting anything. So the average person doesn't usually lift weights after their 20s, and they stop sprinting and they stop doing regular intense exercise after their even high school for a lot of people. So it's hard to say if the decline is because of there is like a natural component there, but the sedentary lifestyle is also like a major factor. And one thing I want to add more is like immune function declines with age, and this one happens usually slightly later in life. So like in your 60s and 70s, elderly people have like a much weaker immune system, and that's because of immunosenescence. So the immune system itself ages as well, and every other organ system in the body ages, and they can age at different rates. So there is no like universal, let's say, cutoff point for everyone. If you're a healthier person, you can postpone the decline a lot, and if you're unhealthier, or if you have some comorbidities or even genetics, then you might start to experience the decline in whatever aspect of health at a different age.
More rapidly. Okay. And so with muscle, that's really interesting, right? So it's slightly later in women than it is in men, but we're looking at 30s and 40s. When we look at VO2 max and aerobic capacity, can you explain for those people listening that don't know what a VO2 max is, first of all, what it is, and then when we start to see that decline?
Yeah, so VO2 max is usually used to assess maximum oxygen consumption during physical activity, and it's like the best reflection of cardiorespiratory fitness. So like how well your heart is able to work and lungs are able to work during like exercise. And it is important for longevity because your heart is one of the most important organs, and just having a working heart reduces the risk of many of the chronic diseases as well, like heart disease. And there's a huge connection between the heart and brain health and kind of systemic health in general. And I do think that so a higher VO2 max being associated with reduced mortality probably is a lot to do with the fact that to have a higher VO2 max, you need to exercise more. So like there are maybe like a few genetic anomalies who are able to have a very high VO2 max with no exercise, but I guess they're very rare. And even then, if they exercised, they would still have a higher VO2 max. But I think that it's kind of irrelevant because you would still want to exercise, whether or not the relationship between VO2 max and longevity is causal or not. Because we know from pretty much like universally, you find that exercise does support longevity. It reduces the risk of all the chronic diseases. It's going to affect all the hallmarks of aging in a positive way, like it promotes mitochondrial function, it reduces chronic inflammation, it supports telomere function, it supports nutrient signaling, it supports all the other hallmarks of aging in a positive way. So it slows down biological aging, and it also supports all organ function, like it supports brain health, heart health, lung health, muscles, bones. So like there's no reason why you don't want or why you shouldn't exercise in moderation at least, and exercise increases your VO2 max. And I do think that there is some causal relationship between VO2 max and heart function as well, but at least most of the studies are mostly like observational studies that people who have a higher VO2 max tend to live longer and they have reduced risk of mortality.
So, which is why exercise is kind of dubbed the magic pill, right? And if it was a pill, everyone would take it. So when we're looking at VO2 max, first of all, then, what would be the type of exercise that people can do that would most increase their VO2 max? And I know you actually shared and ran an experiment on yourself a few months back, I think, on Instagram about how you'd improved your VO2 max. What would that look like for someone who maybe has measured it? Maybe they've done it on like an online or some kind of sub-maximal test, or they may have done it in a lab and they're looking at it thinking, right, I really, really want to prioritize this. What would that look like?
Yeah, so just getting fitter is the like biggest determinant of VO2 max. So if you get fitter, whatever that means, your VO2 max will increase. And there's even like some studies finding that these breath devices like Aerofit or something like that, similar ones, they're called like, I guess something like resistance breath work or something, where you're actually forced to like breathe forcefully with some breath holds. Even then they can see that the VO2 max, at least for people who have a lower VO2 max to begin with, they can see a small increase in VO2 max. So it has to do with just improving heart function and lung function and the muscle function as well, if you incorporate exercise. And even like resistance training, if you lift weights, you might see an increase in VO2 max just because you get fitter slightly. Now there is probably like a ceiling for how high your VO2 max can be with just weightlifting. But as a beginner, like just anything, if you're starting off with a like pretty poor fitness, then doing anything will increase that. But let's say you are already pretty physically active and healthy, then cardiovascular exercise is by far the most effective way to increase VO2 max. And what I found from my own experience and from the studies as well, I can see that it doesn't matter which type of exercise or cardiovascular exercise it is, just doing cardio, whether that be low intensity cardio or high intensity cardio, all of it will increase VO2 max as well. And the more you do it, the higher it's going to be. So it's like, the fitter you become, the higher your VO2 max is also going to be. There is some like different opinions about whether or not zone 2 cardio or like this jogging or low intensity cardio versus HIIT intervals, which one is better for VO2 max. So I guess you would have to look at it from the idea of, okay, like if you want to improve your overall cardiorespiratory fitness, then you need to address all of the heart rate zones as well to increase your fitness. And low intensity cardio, which is this zone 2 usually, and that's like 60 to 70% of your max heart rate, this kind of low heart rate training, this one is important for laying like a foundation to your cardiorespiratory fitness. And it's also important for increasing the amount of mitochondria that you have. So this is going to enable you to have like a better like a base. So that's why it's called like building your base. All the professional athletes, they build their endurance and VO2 max by building a very big base. So they increase their zone 2 output. So they're able to run faster or jog faster or cycle faster while staying in this zone 2 heart rate zone. And then you have the high intensity interval training, where you're doing like near maximum effort, so like 80 to 90% of your max heart rate for however seconds or minutes. And this is also very effective for increasing VO2 max. So you can think of it as like sharpening the sword, or like having like performance at the peak of your aerobic output. Because if you're just doing low intensity training, then you might not be able to have that good of a performance at the maximum intensity of your heart rate. Whereas if you only do, let's say, high intensity interval training, then you don't have that good of a base. So you need to kind of do both. And when it comes to HIIT intervals, then slightly longer intervals have been found to be more effective in increasing VO2 max. So anything above 2.5 minutes is better than shorter intervals. And that's probably because of, you do longer intervals, you need to stay in the near maximum zone for a lot longer. So your body is forced to adapt more compared to having like a 30-second interval or 60-second interval, for example. So, there's different protocols you can do. You can do 3 minutes on, even like 1 minute on or 1 minute off. They all work. It's just that the longer intervals appear to be better. So like what I aim for is, if I'm doing HIIT intervals, then I'm aiming for 4 minutes. I think for me that's a pretty good sweet spot. You're like really pushing yourself with the 4 minutes, but it's not like very easy, and it's not too hard either. Like you can easily maintain 4 minutes of 80 to 90% of your max heart rate, but you need to like be kind of pushing yourself to the limit with that.
And what about when you look at some of the research on these shorter intervals that are kind of all out, or this concept of sprint interval training, where you can only maintain it for kind of 10 to 20 seconds. And then you have longer periods of recovery where you're going up to sort of 100% or super maximal. Do you think there's a place for that? Do you think it should be done occasionally, like every few weeks, or what would be the protocol with that?
Yeah, there is a lot of benefits to this just pure sprinting. The problem is that you can't sprint for, usually any longer than 20 seconds or something like that, because then you're not really sprinting and then you're just running fast. So yeah, like all out sprint is usually less than 20 seconds. Is it going to like increase VO2 max? Yes, like any kind of interval training will increase the VO2 max. It's just that the longer intervals do it better, or like more. So if you do this higher intensity for 4 minutes, then at least based on the studies, then that yields a greater increase in VO2 max. Now, is it important? Like, if you don't like to do the 4 minutes, it doesn't matter. You don't never have to be like 100% optimal with everything. You don't need to always have the perfect macros or something like that. Like in any other aspect of health, 100% perfection isn't the goal. But if you want to really like, okay, I don't have that much time to increase my VO2 max, I want to be as time efficient as possible, I want to get the best results, then over 2 minutes with the intervals, like 2 to 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes even. I think more than 5 minutes is probably like it's going to be maybe too long of an interval, so you're not really gaining that many benefits after that point. So yeah, like any 2 to 5 minute intervals, I think they're just more effective based on the research. And sprinting itself, if I were to do sprinting, then I would approach that training with a different mindset. I wouldn't try to increase the VO2 max with sprint training. With the sprint training, I would want to just increase the sprint. So like this, all out max effort for this, 10 to 20 seconds. And the main reason for that is because it increases the amount of this fast twitch muscle fibers. So you're like explosiveness and the speed development, which are also like quite important. But it's just the main goal when you're doing sprint training shouldn't be to get kind of tired or to get like a cardiovascular workout. The goal of sprint training should be that you're actually training speed and explosiveness. And for that, you need to kind of be fresh and not kind of gasping for air.
Yeah, which is important, right, as you age as well. How much time do you think we need to spend in terms of that zone 2 training? What would be an ideal protocol for someone on a weekly basis, coupled with the kind of 4x4 training you've described for VO2 max?
Yeah, it depends a lot on what other types of training are they doing and their workout plan. So I think in an ideal world, like doing once a week of zone 2 cardio for like 60 minutes is should be like the minimal requirement for everyone who wants to stay healthy and fit. That would be like the bare, and I think that would be like pretty good baseline for sure for like most people. If the person has more time, they can even go up to like 2 to 3 times per week of 60 minutes. But yeah, that like requires a lot more time, and it might also like, you know, sacrifice some other gains in strength training or something else. So you need to be like careful with, you know, how much exercise are you actually doing, and what's the particular goal in that season right now. So once a week of, you know, 60 minutes, I think you would be getting like 80% of the benefits of zone 2 training by just doing that.
And
And
would it matter if people were listening and they were like, I'm actually short on time, so I'm going to split it into 2 30-minute sessions, or is going that longer duration important?
mhm. So for some of the adaptations to occur, then you do need to stay in that heart rate zone for, you know, at least kind of, you know, 50 to 60 minutes at least. So the benefits of this zone 2 training come from continuous effort for a longer duration of time in a moderate or lower heart rate zone. So like 50 to 60 to 70% of the max heart rate. So that's kind of where most of the like magic actually happens. Now, splitting it up is obviously better than nothing, but there is kind of the duration effect as well, that, you know, that you actually stay in that zone for longer than just 20 or 30 minutes. If the person is short on time, then for cardiovascular benefits, then just doing once a week of HIIT workout would be probably, like, you know, from a time management perspective, a better. So you do 20 minutes of some intervals. So you can do 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off for 5 to 6 rounds, or something like that. Like that will be more like time efficient for VO2 Max and cardiovascular fitness. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then when we look at the muscle strength, we're looking obviously at like muscle mass, also strength, hypertrophy. What's important for people to be thinking about there? You also touched on seasons a moment ago when you were talking about training. How might someone listening to this periodize their training so that they're making sure they have that speed, that power, that strength, and they're getting enough muscle size, right, and hypertrophy as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for muscle growth, then you don't really need to lift more than like 3 times a week. And for like general health as well, I think that's pretty much the maximum benefits you can get. Like if you work out or lift more than that, then that's fine, but there's no inherent like benefits to lifting more often than that. And when it comes to choosing between muscle strength and muscle mass and power, then you can easily achieve like all of them with a proper strength focused workout plan, because if you get stronger, then you will build more muscle, and muscle strength is still more important than muscle mass as well for longevity. So it's associated with more risk reduction in all-cause mortality and heart disease than muscle mass. And you know, if you get stronger, then you will just build more muscle anyway. So it's better to always like focus on the muscle strength component, because then you will always, you know, get stronger and you will get muscle size as well. Now, if you build muscle, yes, you will also get stronger, but the ratios can be manipulated with the workout plan. So like if you focus more on strength, then you get more strength and maybe a little bit less muscle than if you were to be focusing only on muscle size. But it is still like a better deal in my opinion as well. And if you focus on strength, then your like power and explosiveness will also tend to improve more so than if you focus on muscle hypertrophy and muscle size, so to say. So how do you achieve that? So for muscle strength, the main like principle is a progressive overload, which means getting stronger over time. So you can't be lifting the same weights and the same amount of reps, because otherwise your body isn't adapting, and it kind of stagnates and it doesn't see any growth. So you just need to have this linear trend upward, that over time, over the course of weeks, months, and years, you're getting stronger. And you know, you can track that, but obviously just going to the gym and every week try to like get a more bigger, like either increase the weight or do an additional rep or do an additional set or something like that. There's many ways you can track progressive overload. You can track it by increasing the weight, doing more reps, doing it faster, or slowing it down as well, or just adding additional sets. So like the volume component, you can increase the total output of the work, or you just increase the intensity of the work by increasing the weight. So yeah, like there's many ways to kind of achieve that. Kind of what I like to do is that I focus on the main compound lifts. So these are squat, deadlift, bench press, rows, pull-ups. And the reason is that because they're multi-joint movements, they target multiple muscle groups at the same time. They're also like more functional. You're more likely to use them in the real world. Like, a deadlift is very good for picking things up. A squat is obviously very foundational movement. So getting better at those movements would, reduce the risk of getting injured in everyday life while executing something similar. So they're very functional. They're also pretty potent in increasing bone density, and they're, for muscle strength, for sure, like the most effective way or most effective tool that we have.
And this would be what, around 3 to 6 reps, roughly?
Well, not, yeah, like, so there are like these rep ranges that are typically outlined. So if it's like, 3 to 5, 6 reps, that's considered mostly strength. 6 to 12 is considered mostly like hypertrophy, and over 12 is considered more like endurance. Well, all the rep ranges can promote muscle growth, and they can also promote strength gains. So if you just get stronger over time, all the rep ranges will work. But if you get close to like failure, so you don't need to go to full failure with the movement. So you don't need to go like, okay, I can't lift it anymore. But like 1 to 2 reps short of failure appears to be enough to like facilitate the hypertrophy response and increase in strength. But what I like to do is, kind of stick to slightly on the lower end of reps. I'll do like 5 to 6 reps per set, and I'll repeat it, 3 to 4 sets for whatever exercise. And my lifting workouts are like 45 minutes only. I only do like two exercises. So there's like a main compound lift. Let's say it's a leg day. I'll do squats, and I'll do like 5 reps, 3 to 4 or 5 sets, and then I'll maybe add an additional exercise like a Romanian deadlift or something like that for, again, like 5 to 6 reps or 8 reps, something like that. And that's like pretty much my leg workout. And if for an upper body, I'll do like bench press, again, 5 to 6 reps, 3 to 4 sets, and I'll finish up with maybe some like accessory exercise like lateral raise or something like that. And because you don't need a bunch of like different exercises, because the compound lifts target all the muscle groups, like the auxiliary muscle groups as well. And if you're doing like a bench press, you're training your triceps, you're training your forearms, you're training your shoulders, to a certain extent your delts. So it's just the biggest emphasis on the chest, but the other muscle groups are also getting like a very good workout from just the one exercise
at the same time. And when we're looking at, you mentioned like the benefits of exercise are really pretty profound on the body. Many, many benefits, including helping to reduce things like inflammation. I think obviously there may be some short-term inflammation from the exercise itself. One of the things you talk about in the book, and is one of the hallmarks of aging, is inflammation. How can we reduce inflammation?
Yeah, chronic inflammation is pretty central to aging and all the whole chronic diseases as well. And there is a difference between just acute inflammation, which is when you get infected or if you exercise or something like that, versus chronic inflammation, chronic low-grade inflammation. How do you reduce that? So depends on what's the cause of that chronic low-grade inflammation. Is it obesity, excess adiposity, excess visceral fat, even like high blood sugar levels, hyperglycemia? All those things are very impactful for chronic inflammation. So if you're overweight, then obviously you need to lose weight. If you have high blood sugar levels, then you need to kind of manage that. But let's say in all the kind of circumstances, just exercising and losing weight typically will result in lower inflammation levels as well. So it doesn't really matter, okay, what's the cause, so to say, like doing the healthy behaviors, getting enough sleep, eating a proper diet, which doesn't even have to include antioxidants per se. Just removing the source of the inflammation will result in lower inflammation in most cases. Now there are some, like, let's say, secret causes of inflammation as well, or like more hidden causes, like house mold, some sort of autoimmunity. So if a person is reacting to certain foods like dairy or nuts or seeds or something like that, then they might have higher inflammation or higher immune system activation, which is a kind of a different story. But if you don't react to any kind of foods and you're not overeating calories, etc., then the food component is slightly less impactful. So exercise is the most powerful way to boost your body's antioxidant defense, and even things like cold showers have been shown to reduce inflammation in the short term, and ice baths as well are very popular. They reduce inflammation, they reduce muscle soreness and muscle damage. But if you're overweight and you have too much visceral fat, for example, or if you have diabetes, then they're not really going to kind of work. So you need to find you need to fix the biggest source of the inflammation, which is in most cases is like visceral fat, because you eat only like a few times a day, but you have visceral fat with you all the time. So there's fat around the organs, which you can't even see with the bare eye in a lot of cases. So it's kind of that's why it's kind of more like a underlying cause of the inflammation. If you have like a belly, so like this kind of a skinny fat syndrome where you have skinny arms but you have a small belly, then that's a sign of visceral fat.
You mentioned there that in terms of antioxidant defense, that actually exercise is potentially a better tool than necessarily eating lots of antioxidants and polyphenols. How important do you think it is? There's, a lot of research coming out now around diversity of different plants and colorful foods and things, herbs, spices, things like that, to optimize the health of our microbiome. How much is that also tied into aging?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of polyphenols and different fibers. I eat like a bunch of them, and there is a lot of different types of evidence to suggest that they have health benefits. Like you have mechanistic studies, you have observational studies, and you also have randomized controlled trials showing that these plant polyphenols have benefits on reducing inflammation, reducing dyslipidemia, helping with blood sugar levels, liver function, and endothelial function, and brain function, etc. So yeah, all the kind of lines of evidence point in the direction that these polyphenols have those effects. What's the mechanism by that kind of varies. Some of these can be through reducing inflammation, although they don't inherently reduce the inflammation. They mostly support the body's antioxidant defense or increase it. So they increase glutathione in some cases. They do also have vitamin C. These foods usually berries and vegetables have vitamin C, but vitamin C's effects on inflammation isn't super massive. Glutathione is a much more powerful antioxidant than vitamin C, and even some of these, let's say, compounds might have higher antioxidant potential than vitamin C as well. So these different polyphenols, they're more powerful than vitamin C as well. And there's many reasons to kind of consider consuming different kinds of plant polyphenols. I don't think that supplementation with these polyphenols is necessarily a smart idea, because they might be too potent, or because there's also some studies that some of these herbal compounds and let's say concentrated polyphenol supplements, they might even have some like negative side effects on like liver or kidney function. So I think the whole food form is kind of the best source to kind of opt for. And yeah, you can get them from, berries, vegetables, fruits. And the higher sources are usually like darker pigments. So like blueberries, cherries, dark leafy greens, and grapes, and those kind of things.
And also, I know you mentioned you talk in the book about glutathione production and supporting it, and the importance of glycine and N-acetylcysteine. Can you talk a little bit more about that and any other forms of supplementation that you think support and reduce these hallmarks of aging?
Yeah, so glycine and NAC, both of them support glutathione production, which then has been found to reduce inflammation and oxidative stress in humans in multiple clinical trials. And what they've also found is in those studies is that the glycine and NAC also attenuate some of the hallmarks of aging, so like mitochondrial dysfunction and inflammation, etc. And they also improve some of the functional outcomes like walking speed and grip strength and those things. So like, I think, it's too early to tell if, glycine and NAC have any like legitimate life extension effects or longevity effects, but I do think that they're very useful and effective for inflammation status because of increasing glutathione. And based on the evidence, then for the elderly people at least, they would be useful for just quality of life as well, by improving their physical fitness, or not physical fitness, but like physical function, and even like a cognitive function. So yeah, I think for the elderly people at least, they appear to be very effective. For younger people, it's hard to say, because if you don't have higher inflammation, you don't have problems with physical function, then you might not get any benefit from NAC, at least. I think glycine has other benefits as well that make it interesting and worthwhile. So like glycine is also good for glutathione synthesis, creatine synthesis. Glycine levels appear to be also linked to visceral fat levels. So like low glycine levels are a marker of visceral adiposity, and also like sleep, relaxation, blood sugar levels. So glycine has many other benefits beyond the glutathione production. So I am taking glycine myself. I'm not taking NAC every day, but if I were to be like 60 or over older than that, then I would take both of them every day myself. Because even if you're healthy 60, even if you're like a healthy elderly person, then you still produce much less glutathione because of this natural process of aging. So like, you can slow it down if you're healthier, or you can have slightly better health and better immune system function, but it's still not the equivalent of a 20-year-old, even if you're a healthy 60-year-old. So there's some of these age-related changes that you can't control even with your healthy lifestyle, because that's just kind of built into the system.
And some people listening to this might be taking liposomal glutathione. What would be the reason for choosing that GlyNAC combo over something like liposomal glutathione?
I think it's better to support the precursors, because with the precursors, your body will like regulate how much glutathione it needs. So like excess antioxidants and excess glutathione levels aren't good either. So like excess antioxidant supplementation even is, those studies are like not very, like, I guess, strong or robust, but in a lot of clinical trials, even randomized control trials, they find that antioxidant supplementation like vitamin C and vitamin A, they're actually linked to higher mortality. I don't think it's like causal, so it might be that people with worse health take antioxidants, but mechanistically speaking as well, like in animal studies, antioxidant supplementation might shorten lifespan as well, because your body needs a small amount of stress, because these reactive oxygen species, which are, like I said, biomarkers of oxidative stress. They're also like signaling molecules. They mediate the benefits of exercise, and they're not always bad. So you don't want to like completely block all oxidative stress and all inflammation. You need small amounts of it, and taking large amounts of antioxidants directly is potentially more harmful than good. So like taking the precursors lets the body like auto-regulate how much gets produced.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about when we're looking at sleep? I think this is something that people listening to this who are, focused on high performance, we know it increases performance, sleep, but people who are juggling young families, potentially aging parents, careers, travel, will often feel a little bit short slept or underslept. How much is that having an impact on aging versus the regularity of sleep time? So if we look at like consistency of sleep and regularity of sleep and wake times versus sleep quality and duration, because there are times in our lives, right, where we may be able to be consistent with timing of sleep, but it may be shorter sleeping. How much is this influencing accelerations in aging?
Yeah, so for the lowest risk of all-cause mortality, it's 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And if people sleep over 9 hours, then they find that's linked to higher risk of mortality. But that could be because of people who are sick. They have some sort of cancer, or they're hospitalized or something. Then they just sleep that long. They're kind of getting the increased risk of mortality from the disease, not the kind of sleeping that long. And if you're a healthy person, then it's very rare that you would naturally sleep 10 or 11 hours every night. Maybe every once in a while if you're sleep deprived, but not all the time. So 7 to 8 hours is enough. And even for like at least Alzheimer's disease, I've seen that 7 hours even is like the lowest risk. So even if you're getting 7 hours, then you don't need to like worry, okay, I need to try to get 8. Maybe 8 is better probably in most cases, but 7 is already kind of good enough. If you sleep less than 6 hours consistently, like regularly, then that is also linked to higher mortality. And sleep deprivation, not sleeping long enough, increases the risk of diabetes. So like your blood sugar rises, your inflammation rises, your let's say brain accumulates more of these toxic proteins and aggregates, which in decades is going to increase the risk of Alzheimer's. And it also increases the risk of atherosclerosis, so the damage to the endothelium, and which then promotes the plaque buildup. But these things happen over the course of decades. If you sleep a few, even like a few nights per month, for example, you're sleeping only 4 or 5 hours, then that's not really like something to worry about if it happens like every once in a while. And at other times you sleep 7 to 8 hours regularly. So it's more about like how much are you sleeping on a regular basis. So like this episodic sleep disturbances aren't inherently like that harmful unless they become like every other day or something like that. If you have children, then that's unfortunate situation, and it's kind of unavoidable. So there's nothing that would indicate that some aspect of this polyphasic sleeping, or like breaking up the sleep into multiple points and waking up several times a night, that it would be like inherently more harmful than monophasic sleep, where you sleep all throughout the night. So even if you have a baby and you have to wake up a few times a night because of that, then it feels bad to wake up in the middle of the night and you're feeling super tired. But as long as you get the 7 to 8 hours, then it's not like inherently more harmful than that.
And when you're looking at that 7 to 8 hours, obviously is optimal, and you were saying the risks go up when you go below 6 hours. What about for people who are like 6 to 7 hours most nights? Is that just a gradual increase in risk as you trend towards that sub 6 hours?
below 6 hours is more harmful, than 6 to 7 hours, or it's linked to higher risk. So, but it's kind of this U-shaped curve that 7 to 8 hours is the lowest risk, and going below there increases the risk. So if you're like 2 hours, then that's worse than 4 hours, and 4 hours is worse than 5 hours, and etc. But there are still some, I guess, genetic differences and individual differences as well. There is a small population of people who have these short sleeper genes, but they're very rare, like 0.1 or something like that percent of the population. So most people who think they might have these genes, they don't really have it. They just might have gotten used to it somehow because of caffeine intake and just adaptation as well. So, but again, some people might feel very normal with just 4 to 5 hours of sleep as well, and I wouldn't say that they're inherently increasing the risk of Alzheimer's or something like that. But the problem is that like your body adapts to however long you're sleeping. So if you're always sleeping 4 hours, then after a few months you're very used to it, so it becomes your like new baseline, so you don't even know that you're kind of underslept, and that's kind of the problem. And there are some cases where you just don't feel tired. So let's say a few times a month I have a few nights where I just sleep like 5 hours or 4 hours, and I wake up and I'm feeling super fresh. Nothing is wrong or anything like that, and I just start the day. I don't need any caffeine or anything like that. And usually it coincides with times where I'm not like exercising that much, so my sleep drive is much lower, so my body needs less sleep. Whereas if I'm exercising, then I tend to want to sleep longer as well. So yeah.
And what about fasting? What are your thoughts around that? It's gotten a bit more controversial recently. Do you think that there are benefits to longer term fasts a few times a year? Do you think it's something people should be incorporating into their lifestyle?
I think there's no like evidence that multi-day fasting has benefits, or that it would be providing any unique benefits that you wouldn't get from just a regular weight loss diet or a regular healthy diet. There's depends on the person and which way they like to go about it. So if you don't like to diet at all, you don't like to restrict your food intake to lose weight or maintain normal body weight, then you could just okay, I'm gonna once a week I'll do a 48-hour fast, and that keeps me at low body fat percentage, that kind of maintains food satisfaction, etc., whatever the reason may be. Whereas other people, they like to eat 3 meals a day, and they don't like to fast, but they still lose the weight and they keep normal body weight because of eating slightly less on those days. So there's multiple ways to kind of approach this, but the idea that extended fasting would give some unique benefits isn't there yet, at least not right now, so to say. So it's I wouldn't like recommend or say that okay, this is definitely worthwhile to do. Now with daily time restricted eating, so like you do 16 and 8 method or 1 meal a day or whatever the window is, then the clinical trials find that it's not superior to regular calorie restriction if the calorie intake is the same. So if they put you into like a food lab or into this metabolic ward, and they control all the calories that you eat and everyone else as well, then it wouldn't matter which method you follow, whether that be some 2 meals, 1 meal, or 3 meals, 6 meals with reduced calorie intake, as long as the calorie intake is the same. Now, in the free world, people who do intermittent fasting tend to undereat calories and they tend to lose weight. So in those studies, they find that the people who are doing intermittent fasting tend to lose more weight because they most likely just end up eating less calories. So it's like very satiating to eat 2 meals a day, or it's harder to overeat if you eat within reason in that time frame. So that's why people in those studies lose more weight. But if the calories were to be equated, then there's no additional benefits. Now, that's kind of again like a it's kind of irrelevant in my opinion, because most people don't count calories anyway. So for most people, the most practical advice is to find a way of eating that like automatically enables them to lose weight and enables them to maintain low body fat percentage. And a lot of people, it's gonna be some form of intermittent fasting, like 16 and 8 or something like that. For other people, it's not. For other people, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner with snacks, but with reduced calorie intake. So it depends a lot on the person and the even psychological profile in that sense of which way of eating they like. I do think that there are some unique benefits as well to intermittent fasting, but that's mostly related to like sleep and other aspects of health. So if you confine your eating window slightly, especially if you do more earlier time restricted eating, then that appears to be slightly better for sleep and the circadian rhythm regulation as well. So if you are doing some form of intermittent fasting, then it's better to do it like earlier. Like in the past, I was more in between in there. Like I think there's not a lot of huge differences, and I still think that there's not a lot of huge differences for like metabolic health. But what I've noticed, at least for myself, is that early time restricted eating is better for my sleep. So if I stop eating 5 hours before bed, then my sleep is better compared to stopping eating 2 hours before bed. So there's kind of that component.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got you. And what about lastly, sauna? We know that the Finnish studies talk about the benefits of sauna. A lot of people are using now infrared saunas. How effective do you think those are? Obviously, they have the spectrums of light that are beneficial, but in terms of protecting against cardiovascular disease risk and things like that, what are your thoughts around infrared sauna?
Yeah, most of the studies are done in Finland on the traditional sauna, and they do find that 4 times a week of sauna use is linked to 40% reduced all-cause mortality and 63% reduced risk of hypertension and heart disease mortality, and 65% reduced Alzheimer's. So there's a lot of like potential benefits to this sauna therapy. With the infrared saunas, I think the effects are probably the same. So the reason the sauna or the mechanisms has to do with hyperthermia, so elevation of your body temperature, that then increases the expression of these heat shock proteins, reduces blood sugar levels, increases autophagy. So there's many mechanisms there, but you can mimic that with the infrared sauna or the infrared blanket or the traditional sauna. So it doesn't matter which form of hyperthermia it is. Like you can even do like some sort of like sit in a car when it's super hot or something like that. I don't know, like because exercise has also like similar hyperthermia effects. So the sauna like mimics some aspects of exercise. So if you're sitting in a sauna, you're getting this low heart rate training a little bit, so your heart rate elevates, and they kind of share similar mechanisms. But what some of the new clinical trials show is that combining exercise with the sauna is better than just exercise alone. So if you do sauna plus exercise, then those people see a greater reduction in blood pressure and a higher increase in VO2 max compared to just exercise alone. So I think it's probably because of the low heart rate effect. So if you're in the sauna, you're still getting like a mini workout for the heart, and most people aren't doing enough of this low heart rate training. So you're like going for a brisk walk, figuratively speaking, if you're in the sauna. And if you're doing it for 20 minutes 4 times a week, then that kind of adds up quite a lot of minutes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so it doesn't need to be next to the exercise. It's just in addition to.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we should point people to the book, because we've sort of only really scratched the surface here. And I think, but we've done it pretty well in terms of giving listeners an overview of the things that they want to start thinking about. The book itself, I found super useful for diving into the areas we've discussed in much more detail. And also, I think you really helpfully lay out in there blood testing, lab work that people can look at and monitor over time, so that they can really take charge of their health. And as I'm always saying, we want to become the CEO of our health. the book is now out. It's in on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
How can people connect with you, Siim? They can go to Amazon, I assume, to buy the book, or your website. Please share and how they can connect with you.
Yeah. So my website is siimland.co, and I'm Siim Land on social media, YouTube and Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you. We will link to that in the show notes and also to the book. And thanks again for coming back on the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.